What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the second weekend of the beta for Modern Warfare 3 is live. This is currently open for PlayStation users, and it is the early access portion of the beta for PC and Xbox players, so for those that have pre-ordered or have a beta code. And with this, there were a handful of changes, and they released the patch notes for this, and I wanted to go through these changes in great detail today. And first, just a really quick recap of the new content we have access to. First off, the level cap got bumped up to 30, High Rise was also added, as you can see in the gameplay in the background, and Orlov Military Base was added as a new ground war map too. On top of this, we have the new Cutthroat mode, which is 3v3v3, and Search and Destroy. Now, let's dive into the actual changes that happened between week 1 and week 2, and the first big thing is they added a name tag above the enemy diamond, so it's no longer just a little red diamond that you see above their head. Now you also see their name tag in red, and this helps a little bit with target acquisition and immediately recognizing when that's an enemy versus a teammate. And this was one of the bigger complaints throughout the first weekend of the beta, and I've got to say, so far this is a nice improvement. It definitely helps to some degree. However, I did want to point out, I think they can take this a little bit further, because there's still a very clear issue when there's a nice bright background behind that diamond and name tag. It just doesn't really pop from that. It can really easily blend in and be hard to see behind that. And the problem with this is it leads to inconsistency. Sometimes that name tag will pop up no problem if there's a nice dark background, but then when you get a light background, it's much harder to see. So just for consistency's sake, I would like to see them add a little bit of a stroke or a shadow behind the text as well as the diamond. I know the diamond has a little bit of its shadow behind it, but maybe even slightly more than that, just to make it pop out a bit more and to make it more consistent in various lighting situations. So that was the first change, and I also wanted to point out they didn't make any adjustment, as far as I can tell, to the teammate's name tag that appears above their head or the size of the dot or anything. And similar to the enemy name tags, again, this is just really inconsistent depending on the lighting situation, and I wouldn't mind seeing them either increase that opacity a bit or adding a bit more of a stroke or shadow behind the text and the dot, just so it pops a bit more clearly. As for the next thing they mentioned in the patch notes, this hasn't changed with the game yet, but they are preparing an update to decrease the slide to sprint delay. So after you slide or after a slide cancel, when you want to get back into a sprint, as of right now, there is a very noticeable delay compared to Modern Warfare 2019, for instance. And this confirms that they will be shortening that delay, hopefully at some point throughout this second weekend, so we can test out that change before launch. After that, let's get into some weapon balancing, and the first thing they did is, across the board, they reduced the tac stance spread while sliding. And unfortunately for this specific thing, I didn't have any pre-patch testing to compare to, but just so you guys are aware, if you slide in this game and mid-slide you start aiming down sight, you'll go directly into that tac stance, which gives you a tighter spread than hipfire, until the end of the slide, and then it will go into a full aim down sight. So during that process of sliding in the tac stance, this is what it looks like for the various classes of weapons after this buff. You can see it is quite a tight spread, much better than hipfire, so you should be able to fire reasonably accurately while sliding here. Additionally, for weapon balance, the Striker SMG caught a bunch of nerfs. Now, most of these nerfs were to mid to longer ranges. Right up close and personal, this gun should perform basically exactly the same as pre-patch, or at least very similarly, where it's going to be quite a consistent 4-shot kill. However, at the second damage range, previously, this was a pretty consistent 4-shot kill still. That 4-shot kill actually extended out pretty far, whereas now it's going to be a 5-shot kill unless you start mixing headshots in for that medium range. And then at longer ranges, it's also going to take you an extra shot to kill, up to a total of 8 shots to kill at really long ranges, whereas previously, it would only drop off to a 7-shot kill at most. Now, based on just a little bit of gameplay time with the Striker after this update, it still feels like a solid SMG if you treat it right, you use it close to mid ranges, but it is noticeably worse when you try to stretch those ranges out, whereas previously, I had no problem stretching those ranges out across the map and still competing effectively with assault rifles. In either case, those are the only weapon balance adjustments we saw. As for kill streaks, with the Guardian, they decreased its health from 550 down to 400, and I think that's a welcome change. It really did take quite a few shots to take one of those Guardians out, and I did get the feeling it was a bit on the bulky side, so that has been reduced by a noticeable margin. And on top of this, they cut its lifetime in half. Previously, it would last on the map for 120 seconds if nobody destroyed it, whereas now it's only going to last for 60 seconds on the map. As for the next thing, for ground war game modes, they removed the fuel from vehicles, so you no longer have a fuel gauge that you have to worry about. Pre-patch, you would run out of fuel and then that vehicle would essentially become useless. That's no longer the case for ground war, although I'm assuming that will still end up being the case for the Warzone modes. Also, something I think a lot of players are going to be happy to see, they removed the spawn overhead camera sequence in Hardpoint, which is great to see. I don't know why they decided to bring that back in the first place. I mean, I think I remember in Vanguard, Sledgehammer had that spawn overhead camera, and that was one of the beta complaints, and they took care of it and got rid of it. Maybe this was just another case where they decided to put it in because it's something that's so easy for them to fix for the community, but in either case, I'm glad they did fix this. After that, they fixed several map glitches that were found. There was an area where people could glitch under the map in a state under the waterfall. That has been fixed. There was also a broken spawn location on Favela where if you would spawn there, it would just kill you immediately. And then finally, on the ground war map, there was an area where you could get into the wall. I think there's also an area you can get under the map. Maybe it's the same spot. I've seen a few clips on Twitter, and I ran into this once as well. I had somebody kill me from inside a wall. That has apparently also been fixed. So it's good to see they're getting on top of these nice and quickly. After this section, they also left a little note here just saying that they are continuing to investigate reports of poor spawn selection, and they are still looking for feedback on this and people sharing clips of unfavorable spawns. I've actually got my full spawn feedback video coming out later today. I'm going to upload this one. And this one's got a lot of very detailed feedback. I spent a ton of time last weekend analyzing the spawns. I've got them figured out pretty well by now, and I actually think they could be significantly improved with some reasonably simple changes. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that video. Like I said, I will have that one coming out later today. But it is interesting to note here, in the patch notes, they didn't mention that they actually made any spawn changes from the first weekend. Now, perhaps they did on the back end, and it's just not something they're stating in the patch notes, but as far as we can tell, they didn't actually make changes here. They're still just going to be investigating. But back to the patch notes, they mentioned operator movement animations will now play properly in the moments following a respawn. And I'm assuming this must be third-person animation, so when you see other players spawn in. Apparently something was going on with that. It's not something I ever noticed, but apparently they have fixed that, so that's good news. And then after that, there's a bunch of just little bugs and issues like missing icons in the gunsmith, for instance, or playlist updates. If they happen while you're in the menus, they'll pop up properly for you now. A few crashes have also been resolved. And that's pretty much it. Those are all of the changes that happened already from week 1 to week 2 of the beta. Like I said, we should be expecting some adjustments throughout this second weekend of the beta as well. I'm very curious to see that slide change especially. And also they mentioned the Trello board is now live for Modern Warfare 3 as well, so I'll be sure to leave a link to that down below. If you guys want to take a look at what they're currently tracking, what they're aware of, what they're working on, this is a great place to do that. And hopefully they stay on top of this Trello board much better than Infinity Ward did. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, what do you guys think about the changes and improvements that they've already made to the game? And second, what are the pieces of feedback that you still have that you would like to see changed either before the end of the second weekend or at the very least before the game launches? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.